Hi, welcome to Being Matthew 25, a monthly live stream series from the Presbyterian Mission Agency. I'm Melody Smith, Associate Director for Digital Communications and Marketing for the Presbyterian Mission Agency. And I'm standing in as host today for Dee Decker, our Acting Senior Director of Communications, who's on a well-deserved post-GA vacation. Joining me today is the Reverend Dr. Diane Moffett, President and Executive Director of the Presbyterian Mission Agency. How are you today, Diane?
I'm doing well, Melody. I hope you are.
I am. Have you survived GA?
I have. We are dealing with all the implications of the decisions that were made at the General Assembly and just looking forward to being a co-creator with God as we go into the future.
Great. You know, in this episode of Being Matthew 25, we want to talk about hospitality and spirituality. Through the generosity of the Holy Spirit, the gift of hospitality includes the ability to warmly welcome and receive people who are unknown to a community. And there's biblical foundations for that. If we look at the story of Lydia and Paul in Acts, it's an example of a relationship that began as an interfaith friendship and progressed to an incarnational ministry through spiritual generosity and the gift of hospitality. That might sound familiar. In 2012, the Presbyterian Mission Agency set out to ignite a movement within the PCUSA that results in the creation of 1,001 new worshiping communities. We aspire to create the conditions that allow our existing worshiping communities to flourish. I think that sounds like a good definition of spiritual hospitality. What about you?
Absolutely. And so many of the 1001 worshiping communities are offering that kind of hospitality to neighbors and friends that are in the various communities in which those worshiping communities are established. And so, yeah, much like Matthew 25, 1001 is engaging the whole church in terms of the creation of new worshiping communities and what that means in terms of hospitality, really reaching out beyond our own families. And so it's happening. New churches are really offering that hospitality to communities, and they're beginning, and young adults are being engaged, and immigrant fellowships are forming, and fellowships with people of color and indigenous folks. It's just wonderful to see what God is doing as we reach out to our neighbors, offering that kind of hospitality and community.
It's inspiring. The Open Table is a new worshiping community that curates spaces and experiences meant to challenge and inspire, addressing Christian ethics in real-world situations and overcoming divisions through open dialogue. Let's take a look at the Open Table community and ministry.
Yeah. The Open Table is a community of peace and reconciliation in a city divided. We are committed as an actively anti-racist church to bring in more people of color than white folks to speak at our gatherings.
We meet around a dinner table together and have conversations about faith and spirituality and the ways that culture and politics intersect with that. We often find that these conversations teach us things about the needs of our community, which then allow us to do what we can to partner with our community to meet those needs.
What we were wanting to do at Second and what 1001 was doing meshed perfectly. We put a job description out for a local missionary. We wanted someone who would be a part of our community that would help us to re-engage with our neighborhood in a new way, and that ended up being Nick Pickrell. Because of the things that he'd done with the Catholic worker movement, theologically we were in a very similar place.
So the partnership between Second Presbyterian Church and the Open Table has been unbelievably fantastic. It's been great to share space and to swap ideas. We have folks who are coming who are Black folks, indigenous folks, people of color, white people, young, old, rich, poor, gay, straight, and they're coming to engage in dialogue about a number of things that are affecting our community. And they almost to a T, are pleasantly surprised at the fact that we are a church.
To me, it's life-giving. It is I'd rather come here on Sunday nights and do dishes and just look out at the community and listen to the conversations. You know, it's a lot cheaper than therapy.
I often catch myself just stopping for a moment during our open table gatherings to look out over the room, and it occurs to me that I'm seeing the gospel happening before my eyes. People who are strangers are becoming friends, people who are guests are becoming hosts. It is the closest I've ever come to experiencing, I don't know, the gospel, I think, in real life.
All I can say is I am immensely grateful for the ways that the PCUSA and specifically the 1001 New Worshiping Communities movement has allowed this community, the Open Table, to not only survive but thrive.
It's been a fantastic kind of symbiotic relationship between our church and 1001, and the support, the funding, the coaching, the assessments that they've provided have been fantastic.
That is so amazing. I love that it's cheaper than therapy. Joining us today is Nick Pickrell, organizer of the Open Table, and hopefully we're having connection issues, but hopefully also Pastor Reverend Dr. Letiah Fraser, to share their evolving story as both a new worshiping community and a Matthew 25 community. Thank you both for sharing this window into your world of hospitality.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, no problem. And I see Letiah got connected. It's so good to see your face.
I have made it. It's good.
You know, the Matthew 25 vision speaks to radical and fearless discipleship as it seeks to help those who join the journey embrace the focuses of building congregational vitality, dismantling structural racism, and eradicating systemic poverty. How do you see these in the mission of the Open Table? And I'll let you two decide who's going to answer that.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are a few ways that it happens. I mean, a couple of the main things you would have heard in the video already. So, I mean, one of our main focuses as a church is to build a multiracial church, and one that takes into account like the history and present reality of the ways that the legacies of racism then and now are continuing to wreak havoc on communities of color and white folks, because it hurts us all in different ways. So we try to address that head on as a community. And we also know that poverty, we need to be intersectional in our analysis. And so obviously poverty is a big one there. And we have been active over the years in the Poor People's Campaign, both, you know, on the Missouri and Kansas side. And Letiah is very active. I gestured the wrong way. There we go. Letiah is very active in the Poor People's Campaign, even nationally. So we do that as well. So those are just a couple of ways. And then obviously, like our gatherings are all about the intersection of spirituality and social issues. So we're trying to talk about things that are very much affecting people on the ground today, and co-laboring with Christ so that we can glimpse that community of God right here in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. I think I would also add, just recently there's been a transition in leadership in terms of Nick stepping away as organizer of the Open Table and me stepping in as the organizer and pastor, with the intention that our leadership had over these last 2 or so years to have leadership of color as part of the commitment to our work of dismantling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pastor Letiah, you really are. It was a great lead-in to my next question for you and Nick. If I may refer to you as Nick and Pastor Letiah, I'm glad that you were able to get on. But yeah, I wanted to know, first of all, thank you for bearing witness. Thank you for being a part of our Matthew 25 vision for mission, to change the world and to really create people who understand what God would have in terms of the issues that have plagued our world. And we've got to dismantle the structural racism, which has to do with how we honor God and how we honor one another at its core. And of course, poverty, which is, again, a dishonoring of the human spirit and the human beings, because we all need to have basic necessities in order to flourish. So just want to say, just shout out to you and the work that you're doing, praying God's blessings upon you as we really center those who are in the margins of our community and talk about creating something that really reflects what Jesus Christ, the movement that he started. So I just want to let you know a little bit about some inside Presbyterianism stuff. So in the Presbyterian Mission Agency, we're using a word this year to kind of describe where we are, and we believe that we are evolving. So the word is evolve, and it's based upon Philippians 1:6, that scripture that says, the one who began a good work in you will carry it into completion until the day of Christ Jesus. And so can you share with us some of the ways in which the open table is evolving? I heard about the leadership switch. Nick, you kind of started it and was providing the leadership, and now you have Pastor Letiah Fraser, who is there and leading the people. What in other ways are you all evolving as you go deeper into this endeavor?
For sure. Letiah, do you want to speak first, or do you want me to start?
You can go. Go ahead.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, some of the ways that we have been evolving, obviously. So when the Open Table started, we were just a community of hospitality and conversation. And so we started as an all-white group of people who were meeting, and really, a lot of us were at the beginning of our own journeys as it relates to just waking up to our own racial identity and the implications that it has and the kind of power that holds over society. And so as we began to deepen our commitment to that, as you heard in the video, some of the different moves that we made was, okay, we recognize that racism is a very real thing, and it is it's a barrier to human thriving. And really all of creation thriving. And so we began to address that. We started initially by just inviting folks to speak about, what is it? Like, we would invite someone who is Latinx to come and speak about immigration, for instance, or we'd invite someone who is Black who was incarcerated to speak about that. And so we realized, oh my God, it can go deeper still. And so we began to be like, okay, well, we're just committed to, because our model is to have a bunch of different folks from all over the community to come and speak. So then we're just like, okay, we're committed to having more BIPOC folks than white folks to speak about anything and everything under the sun, rather than just bringing folks in to speak about one thing. And then in addition to that, we saw the ways that power was moving even within the Open Table, and began to address that structure. So at the Open Table, we've tried to become very relational and very flat in our leadership, because we recognize that it's if there isn't two-way accountability, things can get kind of wonky, and especially if we're seeking inclusion, then we need to have our leadership body, our leadership structure, those on staff, to reflect the community that we are serving and that we are a part of. And so we began to make more moves to kind of dismantle and disrupt the ways that power was moving within the Open Table, both in the way our gatherings presented and as well as behind the scenes in our leadership structure. So those were some of the ways, and now you're seeing some of the fruition of that as we kind of have tweaked our vision. Now we're seeking to be a community that is all about liberation and healing, specifically for BIPOC folks, but white folks by proxy. Because a lot of folks say they welcome all, but you can walk into a space and it's just it's pretty clear that a good chunk of the congregation have not done work to properly welcome folks into the life of that community without having to do some level of assimilation. So those are some of the deeper cultural pieces that we're trying to address now as we've evolved, as it relates specifically to the issue of racism.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
And I would say, I think I love the word evolve. Many of our churches, whether new worshiping communities or established churches, are evolving in light of COVID. And so um, we are able to live into more of the vision of being a place of healing and liberation. And how that's kind of looking right now is building community again. Once we've been separated a lot because of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Sometimes it
sharing.
does feel like a reunion after COVID when we get back together in person. There's been a little bit of that with GA, and I don't know about you, Diane, but I feel like it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a perfect opportunity for that
And,
hospitality.
and we might want to say, for those who are watching who are not Presbyterian and don't know our acronyms, GA
Yes.
means General Assembly. So that's when the entire church comes together, representatives from our church comes together and begin to think about the things that God would have us to do in terms of our own evolution as a church, and then statements and stances that we make as we engage faith and engages the world and the issues that are confronting us. So that's what General Assembly is all about. Just wanted to put that in there
No,
because
it's
we use those
good.
acronyms so much. And
We
so
swim in alphabet soup.
that's
Absolutely.
right.
So I have a question. You're a new worshiping community, but you're also a Matthew 25 community. How are you experiencing this intersectionality?
And Melody, maybe before we do that, for our listeners, to be
Ah,
Matthew 25 is that you are committed to making disciples, and that means in congregational vitality, making sure that people are faithful in the context that they are in terms of bearing witness. And it's also dismantling structural racism and eradicating systemic poverty. So just want to make sure people understand what that means. When you're Matthew 25, you commit to being that
okay.
kind of body. So
I think just the very structure and nature of the open table lends itself to also being a Matthew 25 community. So I don't see a way in which it couldn't be both.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like as soon as we saw the Matthew 25 initiative roll out, we're like, oh, hey, we're like doing this already. So
That's us.
might as well slap the name on there too. So yeah, there's a lot of healthy overlap there for sure.
wow.
So you talked about when we originally talked about your process of, just by the sheer name, the open table, it's food related, it's communion, it's breaking bread together while you discuss important but sometimes challenging topics. I have to ask, is food still involved? Yeah, there you go.
It definitely is.
Still a thing, yes.
Yeah.
And while we're still watching the numbers, of course, but yes, food is still.
Yeah. Can I also ask a question? I think it is a challenge given the water that we swim in, the foundations of this country. We know that racism was embedded in the very institution of the establishment of this country. And you are seeking to be intercultural, like truly intercultural with your leadership, the way in which you're organized. You describe yourself as a flat leadership. What have been some of your greatest challenges? If you can kind of speak a little bit about that, and what are some of the greatest joys?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. Challenges and joys. Well, I mean, I guess a challenge thing, and this is just for me as like a, white dude. Sometimes I want things to move a lot quicker than they do. And so part of it is like, as you're building something that is intercultural or multiracial, things kind of have to move slowly, especially if we want to make sure that we're moving in intentional ways that actually include all and ceases to center just white cultural norms. So, and in addition to that, you'll encounter some differences of opinion as far as like what is important in a church experience, because some folks are just we're so embedded in what, like, you know, like white Presbyterian church, like what that is, or just even Presbyterian church, American Presbyterian church, like that oftentimes just gets kind of, there's a certain style and some cultural norms that go into being Presbyterian as well. And so as we try to open things up, you encounter some friction. But what's been encouraging is I went on sabbatical last spring. And I got the chance to just like chat with some folks who are also doing multiracial or multicultural church projects around the country. And what was encouraging is that everybody that I chatted with, we were all dealing with the same stuff, or we were all like experiencing the same kinds of messiness that comes with community. And honestly, I feel like it's good, because tension is good. It's not bad. Conflict is good. It's not bad. It's a way to grow in intimacy when there is conflict. And I think a lot of times, especially for us white folks, we just want the conflict and tension to disappear. And it's just easier if we do things the way that things have always been done. But also that keeps oppressive structures in place. So the joy, I would say, is seeing the ways that we have emerged from that. Really, it's been like a 2-year discernment process as we've kind of tried to figure out how to take the next steps in our own community's journey. And it's been really, really, it's been really incredible just to see the kinds of things that can happen when we devote time to this kind of work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just like family, community can be messy.
Mm-hmm.
Good message.
And I'll also say the other thing that I'll say, I totally forgot about this, but some of my favorite things is we view racial identity work as a deeply spiritual act. And same thing with folks waking up to their own gender identity or sexuality. Those kinds of things are deeply spiritual acts, because it's ways that we can finally shed the stories or the ways that society says that one has to exist in order to get their needs met in this country and in our communities. And it's been beautiful to see folks kind of wake up to it and to have like the myths that kind of are with us from birth, really, as we are enculturated into this society, just kind of fall away, to begin to see things clearly and to see themselves clearly in a new way. And it's really beautiful to see. It's been so transformative, and it's probably one of my personal greatest joys to see, not only for myself to wake up to that, but to see others do the same.
Yes, it's very powerful.
That aha moment. Yes, for sure. Is there anything else about the open table that you'd like to share with our viewers? Where do you see the future of the open table in your evolution?
I think the future is still forming, since this is like my first official full week, but definitely continued shared leadership, continuing to work on our racial identities, and how that relates to our spirituality, figuring out what it means, because we attract folks who are in various levels of deconstruction, which is great. But what does it mean to reconstruct a spirituality in ways that are healthy and life-giving, without having to fear what was before? So, yeah.
That's great, especially the healthy part, to do it in a healthy way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Diane, do you have any other questions for them?
Well, I can't think of anything right now. I just want to just affirm the work that you are doing, and particularly the part about deconstruction and the pieces that are falling off, and in church language, being born again, right? Kind of starting over, seeing everything from a whole different perspective that honors our humanity and on our relationship with God, and honors each other. And that's what I see you all doing. And so if there is any way that we at the mission agency can assist in any way as you continue to form as a 1001 worshiping community, that's the thing that I think is most important for me. You are there. And I think it's important if you're working with any population that you get close and you be upfront and you be incarnational. So I'm sure that there will be challenges ahead, and we just certainly want to learn with you and grow with you and affirm who you are in Christ, and the disciples that you are making by modeling and embodying that. It is not easy. I know it isn't. So, but it's possible, right? I mean, it's really possible. I mean, that's why you all have gotten into this work. So my last question, I guess, would be more personal, like the thing that really made you decide that this was the work that you wanted to do. This was the work that you were called to do. What kind of, I don't know if you want to call it spiritual transformation or aha moment for you that said, I feel called to this work? I think that's something I'm always curious about. That'd be my final question. And that's for both of you.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say for me, what's funny about my own journey, I guess, so whenever in the video that played initially, they said they put out a call for someone to be like a local missionary or something like that. So I had lived for 5 years at a place called Cherith Brook Catholic Worker, and that's the place where I got a lot of my that's where I first discovered liberation theology and Christian mysticism and some of these different things. And we were both talking about it and living it at the same time. So we offer, at that place we would offer showers to folks who are sleeping on the streets, change clothes, breakfast. Occasionally they'd live with us, and so there was a group of 12 of us, and Cherith Brook is still going strong. But right after I had left there, I just kind of put my hat out there, put my hat in the ring. Is that what I'm saying? Hat in the ring? I'm probably getting the phrase wrong.
That's
I
good.
applied for that job at Second. And mainly, the main reason I took it is I was like, well, the Cherith Brook thing was so ultimately creative that I was like, well, at least I won't get bored trying this. So I didn't initially feel called to start the Open Table. I wanted something that was a creative endeavor. But then as it got going, like, holy smokes, like I was hooked. And like what I often say is I actually don't know if I would be going to church if it wasn't for the Open Table, because the community means that much to me. And the way that we go about building community, the way that we've gone about discussing some of these issues, the ways that we have acted on some of these issues. I mean, it's pretty incredible that, whenever we did the Pickrell campaign, we had for our church, heading out to Jeff City and willing to risk arrest for the sake of justice. Like, I mean, it's pretty incredible to have a church that's willing to throw down in that way. So yeah, I feel like I fell in love as the work was unfolding. And I don't think I realized it until maybe about 6 months into the Open Table actually having started. And then I just couldn't let go. Yeah.
What about you?
I would say for me, really clearly in my college years, felt a call to ministry, and was really clear that it would probably not consist of the traditional church. And so I have been involved in many church planty sort of things, and came to the Open Table through the residency, through the 1001, connected with Nick and said I was in a place of like, I'm not sure I want to do church things right now. And he said it's different. And then spent 2 years as a resident and felt like this is the type of church or the gospel lived out that feels true to me. And so that's where I find myself.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yes.
So everybody likes to have their work affirmed. I mean, we all need to hear it once in a while. And so I want to share, we've had some comments come in on Facebook while you all were talking. And there's one that, there's several, but there's one that I think Rich has ready to come up to just kind of affirm that food and breaking bread together and building communities is has been around for a long time, and you guys are continuing that really good work and inspiring other people. And so I want to thank our viewers for commenting and for affirming, and thanking you guys for joining us today and sharing your passion and your work and your call with us. And God bless you in your ministry.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. That was so inspiring to hear. and I hope you are excited about being a Matthew 25 church as I am, as you begin to see the expressions of the gospel being lived out. Together, we are laying the groundwork. When we're talking about discipleship, we're also talking about issues of racism and systems of oppression and poverty and things like that, because we are really talking about how we care for each other in terms of our relationship with God, that vertical relationship, and our relationship with other people. And that was so paramount to what Jesus demonstrated for us, the love that he had for God's people, and his willingness to just lay down his life so that we could develop that kind of community and that kind of society that really understood and honored the humanity of all of God's people. And so we are seeking to be faithful to Jesus Christ in modeling the liberation, the salvation, if you will, the healing that he brings to all of us. And we can offer that healing through the power of the Holy Spirit. So we're excited about Matthew 25 and continuing that mission. So if you are still discerning the invitation to become a Matthew 25 church, please visit the website listed to help you in the process. And thank you so much for listening today.
And I hope you will join us on Thursday, August 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Being Matthew 25.
Again, thanks for responding to the good news of Jesus and being a faithful expression of what it means to be Christ's disciples in this time and place, for being Matthew 25 folk. Thanks.